Okay, this is going to be part 3 of the E-flite Valiant setup. This is the advanced um, video where I'm going to hook the receiver to my computer and register it and check the firmware version, export the configuration to a file, and then go through it with FlightEngr's smart AS3X and Safe Model Builder. He's on RC Groups. So this is where you get the Spektrum Programmer software. Click that link and download it and install it. And then you're going to need the cable to hook to your computer, hook your receiver to your computer. So you'll need this cable. And then the advanced portion uses FlightEngr's Smart AS3X and Safe Model Builder software, which is down here. That's the program, and then this is the guide to it. He's the one that figured out how to do the reprogramming on AR636s, and also wrote this software to reconfigure the smart receivers that came after the AR636. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run the Spektrum Programmer software. And so there's no Timber here, or not Timber, but Valiant. And since the receiver's in the airplane and it has servos connected to it, the servos would draw too much current to run it off of the USB port. So instead of checking that box, I'm going to plug the battery in on the plane. And of course, having this software up and running when I plug up the receiver to power, the receiver is going to automatically connect. So you'll see that in a second. Okay, so it connected. It shows cable and device connected up here, and it's showing us this. Now you need to be real careful with this menu right here, this box. You want to use the device settings, but you don't want to overwrite a model that you already have. So new model is okay. If it had the name of one that already existed, then you would click show all, and you would pick new model instead of one of these and tell it use device settings. Okay, it just read the configuration out of the receiver to the computer. And so now we can go to edit, and we'll change the name to and we'll say BNF. That's the factory. And we can make a comment down here, a factory setup. So we'll keep this just in case we need to write it back to the receiver at some point. So we'll click save, and that'll change the name. Now I need to export it to the hard drive, and we'll pick a folder that we'll remember. And so we'll just put it right there. And now it's saved. Okay. Now, well, I didn't show you the other part. Let's go to software update. This is where it shows you the version that's in it and the serial number, and you can check for an update. And it's asking me to register it because it hasn't been registered. So I would put the name of the plane, I guess, 1.3M. Okay, so we click register, make sure the name's right. And now it's registered to me on Spektrum site. If I were to sell the plane to somebody else, they wouldn't be able to reprogram the receiver because they can't register it. When you sell a Spektrum product that you've registered, you need to deregister it so that the next owner can do whatever he needs to do with it. Now it's showing that 2.46.1 is available, and it's got 2.44 in it. Let's go down here to install another version and look at the notes. And it shows here that 2.46.1 came out June 6, 23, and they fixed a bug in 2.44.2, which is the version we're currently running. So I would eventually want to update the firmware in it. I'm not going to do it right now, but so anyway, that's where you can find out what they did. Really, anytime they come out with a new firmware version, I go ahead and install it eventually. I may not install it right after it comes out, but I'll put it on there pretty quick. I've never really had a bad experience with firmware updates. But anyway, so I've already exported the file, so we can close this. I'll just minimize it. We'll go back to my folder of files, and I need to run the Smart Model Builder now to load that file that I exported. So we'll go to the folder, and here's the one that I just created. So we'll open it, okay? And I'm gonna clear the serial number. And the other thing is I'm gonna save this under a new name, and I'm gonna call it SASMB, which is short for Safe AS3X or Safe AS3X and Smart AS3X and Safe Model Builder. Yeah. Okay, now normally on a bind and fly, this is set to inhibited, but I already set it using forward programming in the transmitter in the original the first two videos. So I always use the first channel above the number of servo ports. If it's a 6-channel receiver, I use channel 7. If it's an 8, I use channel 9 to control the flight modes in the receiver. On a 10 channel, I use channel 11. Number of flight modes is 3. Use a 3-position switch. And this configuration is locked with Safe Select, which means they only let you turn or enable the safe mode functionality or not, whereas you can choose to fly the airplane with AS3X only, or you can enable safe so that you can use it. So I'm going to change this to unlocked so that I can reconfigure this receiver from the transmitter. And then safe features are enabled in general. I always check that. They may be enabled or disabled through binding. I normally turn that off because I don't turn safe on and off through binding. And of course, these don't apply if I disable that, I believe. And then mounting, the mounting should be already, the orientation should already be correct. In flight modes, flight mode 1, AS3X is on, self-level, angle demand is on, which is safe. Panic is not needed if safe is on. High throttle to pitch mix is active. I normally turn that off because I don't want the airplane to start climbing when I open the throttle. I want it to fly level. Low throttle to pitch mix is a necessary thing because you want the airplane to lower its nose and maintain flying speed when you throttle back. So I do use that. They have the bank angle limit set to 75. This is a fairly fast airplane, so you need to be able to bank it pretty steep to get it to turn around in a short distance. Pitch up and down is 42 each way. I normally use 30 down. On a trainer, I'd use 30 down. On a jet, I might use 45 down. And I'd use 45 up on a trainer, and I'd use 55 on a jet, maybe 60. Flight mode 2 is the middle position of the flight mode switch, and AS3X is active, and safe is disabled. And then since safe is disabled, the throttle mixes don't apply, and the angle limits don't apply. Flight mode 3, safe AS3X is turned off so that it has three positions or three flight modes, one with no gyro. The middle position is AS3X only, and the third position is safe mode with AS3X. And if you're a beginner, that's what you want. You want to put it on a switch where you can take off with the gyro turned off and get it to a safe altitude before you turn the gyro on. Because if you get the gyro direction reversed, it's going to crash your airplane as soon as you lift off the ground, taking off. So until you're used to doing gyros, you need an off position, and don't turn it on till you're high enough that you can save it if it's backwards. Flight mode 4, Horizon uses flight mode 4 for safe fail-safe. And so self-level angle demand is enabled. And what they do is they put the airplane into a shallow bank to make it circle so that it doesn't fly off. And then your angles here, why they use 76 and 79, I don't know. Why not just set it 75 or something? And then gain, flight mode 1, they've got 24, 55, and 60. And they're fixed, they're not adjustable. And the priority is 160. The priority, these gains only apply at the center position of the sticks, and as you move the stick toward the stops, the gain decreases. And the 160, if you use 160, then you can turn the travel down in the transmitter to 40%, and the gyro gain will hit 0 when the stick hits the stop. Since I never turn my low rates below 50%, I use 150 in these. 160 is fine. 150 is okay too. You don't need to play with these. You're not really going to notice the difference. This checkbox enables the derivative values, which they don't use on this plane. I have to use these on some delta wing planes because the wings are short and they don't have much area at the tips, and the plane tends to rock back and forth if you don't put like 40 or 50 in these, especially for roll. Safe gains, since flight mode 1 is safe mode, these are the gains it's going to use in safe. The default is 35. I normally use less on the roll and more on the pitch so that I can rotate on takeoff and flare on landing. And flight mode 2, these are your AS3X gains, and safe gains don't apply because you're not in safe mode. Priority is 160 again. Flight mode 3, which was gyro off, the gains, these are the AS3X gains, but they're not going to be used because the AS3X is disabled in flight mode 3. Safe gains don't apply because you're not in safe mode. And flight mode 4, like I said, that was for the safe fail-safe that Horizon sets up for you. And these are the safe gains that make it self-level and all that good stuff. And they're quite different from what they normally use or what they used in flight mode 1 and 2. They tend to set all of their planes to these values. I'm not sure why, because every plane is a little different. I mean, 38 might make a plane with a limber wing with large ailerons go into oscillation. I think they used around 25 in the other flight modes. 24. Yep. I normally set these to 30, 40, and 50. If I was worried about the wing going into oscillation, I'd set them to 20, 30, and 40. You can always run 10% more, or generally you can run 10% more on the pitch than the roll, and 10% more on the yaw than the pitch, because the wing is the biggest surface and the most flexible. It's most likely to go into oscillation first. The stabilizer and elevator is stiffer, smaller, and it's less likely to go into oscillation. And then the vertical fin and rotor are smaller yet, and even more unlikely to go into oscillation. So you can generally run more gain on the elevator than the ailerons, more gain on the rotor than the elevator. So let's see, did we go through all of these? I think we did. Yeah, we did. Safe settings. Okay. This is for panic mode. I don't use panic mode. I just flip the switch to safe mode if I need to have the plane self-level. This is your throttle pitch mix. They set it to 30. At 30, the angle is 0, and as you go to idle, it increases to -4, and minus is nose down, which you need. High throttle threshold is 70, so starting at 70% throttle, the pitch angle increases until at full throttle it's at 8 degrees nose up, because it's positive. And I set this to 0. I don't use that one. And then this one here, I'd probably set it to -5. It depends on the airplane. And I would probably set this to 40. And I would set this to 85, even though I don't use it generally. And then attitude trim, this is for the to keep the wings level. If the receiver is not mounted perfectly level in the plane side to side, then you might have to put a value in here to make the plane fly level. Generally, it's going to be 0. The pitch attitude trim generally needs to be a positive number, because most airplanes fly nose up. They don't really look like it, but most airplanes need 5 to 10 degrees here, and 6 is good to start with. And then here's safe fail safe, where flight mode 4 is a 25-degree bank to the left because it's negative, and then 14 degrees nose up because it's positive. That's a lot to me. That airplane's going to slow down. Of course, when it fail safes, the motor's going to go to idle, so it's gliding. And with 14 degrees nose up, it may get too slow. So I think that's too much. I think I would lower it to maybe 5 or something. And then the rate and expo, these values here are only used when the receiver is locked. Horizon puts these values in here, and you can't change them except with this program, but generally I don't use these because I unlock it so that I can program it the way I want from the transmitter. And of course, you've got these receivers can have 10 flight modes if you set up enough switches. You only need 3 or 4 though. But flight mode 1 does that. Flight mode 2, they set the rotor to 100%, which that's one thing I don't really like about the way they do their safe modes. They turn the rotor throw way down in safe mode, and you can't really turn the airplane around in the width of the runway. I guess they're scared you're going to veer all over the place as a beginner trying to get it off the ground, but I like a little more rotor control. And then 3, it's 100, which that was gyro off if you disable AS3X. And then flight mode 4 is the fail-safe mode. So that's that. And then the control tab, Horizon, on bind and flies, you have to leave the servo reversing set to normal. You don't want to reverse any channels in your transmitter. They do the reversing in the receiver. However, if you reset the receiver and program it from scratch yourself, you have to reverse any channel that's backwards when you move the sticks, and then run the relearn servo settings and forward programming so that it tells the receiver that you've reversed a channel and what the sub trim is and stuff like that. But From looking at this, I know when I program this receiver from scratch manually, that I'm going to have to go into the aileron channel and reverse it, and go into the rudder channel and reverse it in my transmitter. Um, so, I might make a note of this, or I'm just going to check the airplane, and look and see what's reversed and change it, and then do the relearn servo settings in the receiver. So to set this up for me, I'm going to use channel 7 because it's a 6-channel receiver. 3 flight modes. I'm going to unlock it. Safe is enabled. Mounting, I don't need to change it. Flight modes, what I do on mine is flight mode 1, safe is inhibited and AS3X is on. And these don't need to be on. And these don't matter. So flight mode 1 in my setups is low rates with AS3X because I put them on the same switch. The dual rates and the flight modes in the receiver, I put them on the same switch. I don't have a way to turn the gyro off. I don't really want to turn it off. And in flight mode 2, it's going to be AS3X and doesn't need these 3, and these don't matter. In flight mode 3, this is where I'm going to turn self-level on and AS3X on. So my safe mode is going to be on the opposite end of the switch. It's going to be flight mode 3. And I can just leave high throttle disabled instead of changing it to 0 in that other screen. But you can leave it active. Now the bank angle, I've got to set these. The slower the airplane is, the lower these can be, because a slow airplane doesn't need to bank much to turn in the width of a field. The faster it is, if it's an EDF, then you're going to need to put 85 degrees here so that the wing is almost vertical when you got the stick all the way over against the stop. Pitch down, let's just say 40. And pitch up, I don't know, let's go back. Let's say 30 down. We're in safe mode. 45 up's good. Okay, so flight mode 3, AS3X is on, self-level, angle demand zone, panic, don't need it. These 2 are on, but high throttle to mix is going to be, pitch mix is going to be set to 0 in the other screen. 75, 30, and 45. Okay, flight mode 4, this is where the safe, fail-safe is. I'm not going to, well, let's just set them the same. I don't know why they make them different. Doesn't matter too much what these are. If it's fail-safe, you're not going to do anything with it from the transmitter. So it's kind of irrelevant. You just don't want too much gain in flight mode 4. All right, flight mode 1. This is low rates with AS3X. And I'm going to set this to 25. I'm going to go with a number close to what they had. And I'm going to set these to, I'm going to do 35 here, 10% more than the roll. These to 150 like I want them. I'm going to use 45 on the rudder. I'm going to use 150 here. And flight mode 1 doesn't use the safe stuff, so I don't need to do anything there. Flight mode 2, so we're gonna do 25, 150, 35, 150, 45, 150. And flight mode 2 is AS3X, so the safe gains don't matter. I'm going to go ahead and set these though. I'm going to set them to 25 and 45. I'm going to go back to flight mode 1 and set them to the same thing. If you had panic enabled, it would use these gains. So they shouldn't be 0 to me. All right, 25, 35, 45, 25, and 45. 150s looks good. Same thing for this, 25, 35, 45, 25, and 45. 150s, flight mode 3. This is my real sure enough safe mode. So 25, 150, 35, 150, 45, 150. And then this, since it's a safe mode, these are important now because this is safe mode. So 25 and 45, just like the others. Flight mode 4, where it's safe, fail safe, I'm going to use the same gains. I don't know why they're using such high gains. Like I say, they use the same settings in every receiver. They don't lower these for airplanes that could go into oscillation. Um, so 150, and then this should be 25 again. Okay, and another thing is the AS3X gain sensitivity. This applies for all flight modes. You should not use 2X or 4X until you've used 100% gain in 1X, and it's not enough. I've looked at 50 different configurations that you can download from Horizon, and they never use 2X or 4X. They always use 1X. Now, they do use 100% gain in some planes, but I generally use 30, 40, and 50. But on this plane, I'm going to go conservative and use 25, 35, and 45 because it's kind of a flexible airplane. It's not real stiff. So all four of these should look identical. And this is the thing that wears me out in forward programming. You've got to check every flight mode and make sure they're all set correctly. Setting one of them doesn't fix all of them. And you can't change flight mode 4 because you can't enable it. You can't get to its screens. You can do it here, but you can't do it in forward programming. Okay, panic doesn't matter. And this is already set to 0. And that's -5. We've already done this screen, so we're good here. And then these don't matter because the receiver is unlocked. So now I'm going to highlight the name and hit Control-C and copy it. And then I'm going to do Save As, and I'm going to do Control-V and paste that name in here and save it. Now I can get out of this. I can go back to the Spektrum programmer, and I can import that file, which is right there. And there's the file. Now, to write that file to the receiver, I click Select, and it just wrote it to it. So now my receiver's programmed the way I want it instead of the way Horizon did it. The next thing I need to do is go into the transmitter settings and reverse the channels that Horizon had reversed in the receiver. So we go to the transmitter and go into Model Adjust and Setup, Servo Setup, and reverse the ailerons and the rudder. And then in dual rates, what I do is I use switch B position 0 as low rates with AS3X. And normally I set the expo to 1/4 to 1/3 of what the rate is. And so I would set this to like 15 or 20. And then in the mid position, which is that's my high rates, which is 100%. Then I would set that to like 25. And then the third position is safe mode. And I would also set these to 25. And then, so now you got low rates with 70 and 20. High rates is 100 with 25%. Safe mode is 100 with 25. So now we go to the elevator. And this is low rate. And I would set this to maybe 75. I don't like to turn the elevator down. Let's go to 80. I don't like to turn the elevator down to 70 on the first flight. So 1/4 of 80 would be 20. So we'll slide this over to 20. And then mid position is high rates. And we'll set that to 1/4 of 100, which is 25. And then we'll go to the safe mode switch setting. and we'll set those to 25. And so now we've got 80 and 20, 100 with 25 in high rates. Safe mode's 100% with 25. So now we go to the rudder, and the rudder, I'm going to use 75. The book value is 70, but I'm going to use 75. And then I'm going to use 20 here. And high rates, mid position, I'm going to use 25 there. And then safe mode, I'm going to set that to 25% expo. So now we've got 75 and 20 for low, 100 with 25 for high rates. Safe mode is 125. So that's the dual rates. And so now, anytime you go into the servo setup and change the direction or the travel or the sub trim on a smart AS3X safe receiver, you need to go into forward programming and let's see, relearn servo settings. It's under system setup. So you go to gyro settings, system setup, and click relearn servo settings. Click apply and then complete. And now we've told the receiver how the transmitter is set up. You must do that anytime you make a change in the servo settings. Now looking at the gyro settings, AS3X, flight mode 1, we've got 25, 35, and 45. High rates, we've got 25, 35, and 45. Oops, it's not changing flight modes. Now let's see, what did I do? F mode setup. See what channel I'm on. We're on switch C, we're not on B. I had it set to the separate switch from the rates because I had it set up for one position that had the gyro disabled and one that was AS3X and one that was safe. So I always put the receiver flight modes on B so that they change with the rates. So now, flight mode 1, flight mode 2, safe mode. Okay. So here's where you got to do all this flipping. You got to check every flight mode when you do this forward programming. So this is low rates, which is my flight mode 1. AS3X is on, safe is off, panic's off. All these mixes are off. You don't need them. The middle position is high rates. AS3X is on, safe is off. All of these are off. Flight mode 3 is my safe position. And so AS3X is active like it ought to be when safe is. And we got self-level angle demand. Panic is inhibited. The throttle to pitch mixes are both active, but I've got the high throttle set to 0 so that my plane doesn't climb at full throttle. So we go back, we go to AS3X settings again, and flight mode 1, we've got our 3 rates. Flight mode 2, same 3 rates. Safe mode, same 3 rates. So that's those. And then priority, flight mode 1, which is low rates, they're all 150. High rates is flight mode 2, and they're 150. And flight mode 3, which is safe mode, they're all set to 150. So there's many screens you got to go through and flip the switch to all 3 flight modes. Heading gain is 0 because I don't use it, although it does work good, but you don't want to put it on the rudder. So they're all disabled like they should be. And this is where you change it from fixed to adjustable gain, but as we saw in FlightEngr software, they were not set to adjustable, so they are set to fixed. And here again, you got to flip the switch and look at every flight mode. So there's high rates, and they're set to fixed, and safe mode they're set to fixed. So you've got to flip the switch in just about every screen that shows flight mode at the top. And of course, this is where you would capture the gyro gains if you were using a knob on a separate channel to adjust the gains, but I don't do that. It's so easy to change the gains. You can make a lap or two around the field and see how it flies. You can land and hit the throttle cut and make a change and take off and go again or try it again with different gains. So I don't use variable gains. Here's the safe gains. In flight mode 1 is AS3X without safe. This is flight mode 2, which is high rates, AS3X, so there's no safe. And then flight mode 3 is my safe mode, and there's my roll gain and my pitch gain. And then angle limits. Flight mode 1 doesn't use them because safe is disabled. It's my low rates with AS3X. Flight mode 2 is high rates with AS3X and no safe. And okay, sometimes it does that. It bails out on you. Okay, flight mode 3, there's my safe gains. What was I doing? Angle limits, wasn't I? Okay, flight mode 3, there's my angle limits. So 75 left and right, 30 down, 45 up. Fixed adjustable. These default to fix, so you know they're going to be set correctly. Whereas if you do a first time setup on one of these receivers after resetting it, the AS3X gains are going to be set to adjustable. And if you don't set up a gain channel, you're not going to have any gains. So you got to make sure you set the AS3X gains to fixed if you're not going to set up a gain channel. F mode setup, we were already in there, but it's still good. System setup, orientation should be correct. Gain channel select, I'm not using it. Safe panic mode, this is where you can enable it, but it's inhibited. You don't need it if you've got safe. This is the throttle to pitch mix, and you see I've got it set for 0 on the high throttle and -5 on the low. Attitude trim, this is where you adjust these values to make the plane fly level. If it turns a little bit, you need to adjust the roll, but normally that's 0. And the pitch, set it to 5 or 6 or something. It depends on the airplane. It depends on how the receiver is mounted in the plane too. If it's not level with the center line of the fuselage, then you're going to have to adjust this. Now there is a way to capture. You can capture the gains using that option, and I don't use that generally. It's showing that it needs 8, but it's sitting on its tail wheel, so it's not level. That's one thing. A tail dragger, you got to raise the tail up to where the plane's level before you do the capture attitude trims. And then fail safe is flight mode 4, as we saw, and the fail safe angles -25 and 5, so they're all good. It's easier for me to go through FlightEngr software and set all this stuff than it is to go through forward programming, because you have to go back and forth and make sure you've checked every box. I don't use the utilities generally to copy one flight mode to another. This is where you set how many flight modes there are, but it needs to be set to 2 or 3 depending on the positions of your switch. And you can relearn servo settings as much as you want to, because it won't hurt anything, but you need to pre-flight the airplane before you fly it. And of course, take the prop off anytime you're working on the setup of your plane so that you don't accidentally get sliced by it or have it fly off the table. So I think that's about it. So this fail-safe thing here, I wouldn't mess with that. The bind, you can tell it to go into bind mode here, but it's already bound. Frame rate, these need to be set to 11 milliseconds if you've got digital servos. If they're analog servos, they need to be set to 22 milliseconds. This is between the receiver and the servos. The rate from the transmitter to the receiver may be 22. Factory reset, this is where you wipe out the settings in the receiver, and it will go into first time setup when you go into the menu. And so you don't want to factory reset it unless you really want to. You can restore the settings from backup if you saved them to the backup. Of course, Horizon did save the original settings to backup. So if I click restore from backup, it will put the receiver back like it was when it came out of the box. I don't generally save the settings to backup, but you could. That way you've got a copy of the last configuration you flew. In case you change something and it doesn't fly right, you can go back to what you had before. But I generally don't worry about that too much. And of course, it shows you the firmware version here, which I need to update the firmware using the Spektrum programmer. So we can do that. We can go back to here, go to software update, and we can tell it to install 2.46.1 and say update. So it's writing the new firmware to it. Okay, now it says that the settings on the device don't match what's in my computer. Well, of course not. I just changed a bunch of stuff using forward programming. So now here is where I need to be really careful, because I don't want to overwrite the original settings. The BNF was what I read out of the receiver when I first hooked it up. So I need to say show all. I need to select new model, and I need to say use device settings. Okay, so now we go to models, and now this is what is currently in the receiver, and I can change this to, and we've already got a SASMB. I'm just going to put DX Flyer and a note that says my setup and save it. So now I've got a copy of the way it's configured now. I've got a copy of the way I saved it to the computer and a copy of what was in the receiver originally. And I can hit select and switch between them if I want to, but I'm going to leave it set to this one. So now all I need to do is unplug the battery out of the plane and turn the transmitter off and take a break, and then turn everything back on and check everything, make sure everything's working in the right direction, and tilt the plane 45 degrees in each direction with safe on, and make sure when I raise a wingtip, the aileron on that tip goes up, and when I raise the tail, the elevator should go up. You have to verify that the gyro is moving in the correct direction. To check the rudder, I hold the plane out in front of me with the nose toward me and rotate. I get in a clear space where I can spin around holding the plane in front of me. And as I rotate, the rudder should deflect in the same direction that I'm spinning the airplane, because it should deflect trying to stop that rotation. That's the best way, I guess, to check the rudder, because the rudder doesn't have safe on it. It only has AS3X, and AS3X is temporary. If you move the plane and then stop, it's going to go right back to neutral. So I hold the plane out in front of me and I rotate and watch which way the rudder goes as I rotate. So anyway, that's pretty much the way I do all this stuff. See y'all later.